well.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, we postponed this.
Yes.
If there was anyone eager to see the podcast,
Yeah.
we were dropping like flies. People were sick. Mm-hmm. Cory is still kind of sick.
I am sick, so I have this massive thing of hot, and it's actually way too hot, but it'll get cooler because my throat is just so dry. I'm just like, it's that really annoying cough, you know, when you're just like every 2 minutes. And I'm getting my wisdom teeth out tomorrow.
Ooh.
So I'm kind of dreading it, especially because I do have this cough. I'm hoping it's going to be okay, but I've talked to a couple of people that are experts in the area of dental whatever. Kelly, our very own Kelly.
Dentists.
Yeah, that's right. I have a friend who's a dental hygienist who's actually on our team, Kelly Gunter, who gave me some good advice.
Oh.
And then I also, it's going to be fine, but I was a little bit stressed about going in tomorrow because I'm like, is that a bad thing if you're coughing as you get, you know what I mean? As you get like people like taking hacks onto your mouth.
It is bad.
I know, but apparently it should be okay.
You can cough while they take.
If it's not like if it's not like this regular, massive, forceful cough, you should be okay. Yeah, they were surprised.
I'm not an expert in dental work. I think that's false.
Okay, Matthew, I don't need to be stressed out about my wisdom teeth tomorrow.
You're gonna cough, and then the blade is gonna go.
Yeah, exactly. I know.
And your singing career is over.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay.
At least you have your hands.
I have my hands still.
Yes.
As long as I don't get those in the way.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, great.
Plus, I only thought teenagers had their wisdom teeth taken out.
You know what? I thought that I wouldn't have my wisdom teeth taken out, but I've always had. This is going to be super intriguing for everyone. Over the years, I've always had like 3 or 4 days where they just bug me a little bit. But it's like not brutal, it's just for like a week or so, 3 or 4 days to a week, and then it's gone, then it's fine. But then this last year, coincidentally, it was like in November, they started really bugging me, and they really haven't stopped. So then I went to my dentist like a month ago, and they're like, yeah, you probably should do this, especially if your benefits are running out, which they are in a couple weeks. So I'm like, it's time, yeah. So I'm getting it done before my benefits run out.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
And they're putting me under. I'm doing the whole thing. I will not do just laughing gas or like local anesthetic. I'm like going fully under. Yeah,
like you're out.
Yeah. They're like intravenous, like out. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about coughing.
Well, how are you gonna cough?
That's what I mean. Yeah. I guess
can you cough if you're?
I know. That's what I was wondering. I don't know. I assume that if I'm out cold, I won't cough. I don't know. That's what I asked. But then it said the recovery could be hard too because you might cough and you don't want to cough too much because then it can like.
Yeah.
Oh, anyways, yeah.
It's gonna be bad.
It's gonna. Yeah, thank you.
No matter which way you slice it.
Exactly. That's right. Okay.
The other thing I was gonna say was, do you have to now drink out of a straw for like a week or something?
You're not supposed to drink out of a straw apparently with wisdom teeth. That's what I just read. Is this true? I think this is true.
Yeah.
So I just have to be very careful. I actually don't even know. I have to ask them what I'm supposed to do as far as food goes, but. Yeah, you got to be a little cautious, at least for the first few days.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say, straws have become political. Because this is about politics.
Right, yeah. The
why?
turtles, right? Yeah, tell me. What, yeah.
So, BC or Vancouver, whatever it is, said no plastic straws, only do paper straws.
Right.
When that came out that summer, we went to Oklahoma.
Okay.
And my friend in Oklahoma was laughing because he said, in Oklahoma, the legislature, it's a very conservative state, passed an official ban on the banning of straws. Oh. So in Oklahoma, it's now illegal to ban plastic straws.
That is so funny. What if like a super liberal person comes in there and they're like, we're actually going to ban the idea that you can ban a ban on straws. You know what I mean? And then it's like, oh yeah? Wait till the next one.
We're polarized. We're polarized. So we're just going to recap for those of you who maybe did not hear the message, or it's been a while since you've heard the message. But it's sermon number 3, at least at the Walnut Grove campus. Mm-hmm. And the main idea was that right and left, these right and left political categories, are not very helpful categories for followers of Jesus. They help us to a point, but they're not ultimately helpful. They're prepackaged political bundles that each have an element of the way of Jesus in them, and they each have things that Christians, I believe, must reject if we're following Jesus. And my argument was that Jesus is the embodiment of truth and love, and he wants us to follow him out of these prepackaged political bundles and into a political homelessness that will allow us to stand for righteousness in our day. That's a mouthful, but
definitely, yeah.
That was the idea, main idea. Initial thoughts.
Yeah, I really like that. I really resonated with a lot of what you said there, like with the that idea of being like, oh, like, so do I have to pick a side? Because there's only two, I mean, it's kind of like two main options, it seems like.
Sure.
You're right or you're left, you know, and I like that idea of that, yeah, like obviously there's certain things that maybe on the right that you might sympathize with, but then there's mostly stuff on the left or vice versa,
Yeah.
whatever kind of thing. I think it's tough because you're like, well, number one, it feels like you're getting caricatures often, especially in today's day and age,
Yes.
right? You're getting caricatures of often the extreme right or the extreme left. And so there's so much fodder to deal with, right?
Yeah.
Fodder.
Hit me up with a thesaurus on that.
Fodder?
Just substance, things.
So I think things isn't fodder like stuff
Yeah.
like stuff that you can make stuff out of, I think, maybe. Fodder?
It's like ammunition, kind of.
Yeah.
Ammunition.
Ammunition. Yeah,
Oh,
see? Darcy should
so
be doing
good.
it. Yeah, it's fodder. I just wanted to slip it in there,
No,
but I
it's-
knew.
okay.
Yeah, so, but it does seem like it's like you, and I feel like this is when I've had conversations with people that will say like, oh yeah, but, you know, like but the left are doing this or this, you know, and you're like, oh, and there'll be some extreme example of some really crazy, you know.
Yeah.
But then on the other side, it's the other way around too, where it's like, oh, well, the right, they want to, you know, da da da, and it's like, oh, and that's like the way over on this side. And so it is sometimes really hard to find your bearings. And then also hard, of course, even to vote if you have the opportunity, depending on which country you're in. But,
Right.
you know, so you're like, well, if we only have those two options, how are we going to do this? Like, you know, and I know you talked about that as well, as far as being like, you know, how do we vote? How do we decide
Yeah.
which is the closest pathway, I suppose, to the Jesus ethic for us, or how we feel like God is leading us? I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, it's complicated for sure.
It is complicated.
Yeah.
So let's make sure that in the next few minutes we figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Solve this problem.
Okay, so I was just really intrigued by the story of Sophie Scholl. I had been waiting a number of weeks to kind of like use her story because I haven't really thought about Sophie Scholl's story up until a few months ago, and I was just learning a lot about it. And she's like my hero now.
Huh.
She's one of my heroes. So if you don't know Sophie, she was a 21-year-old activist in southern Germany in World War II. She was a member of the White Rose, this nonviolent resistant group. The group distributed anti-Nazi leaflets, and she really loved God. She had this growing love for the Lord, at her time in like university, and she was part of this little group that just felt like they had to stand for righteousness during their day. And tragic story that they would leave all these leaflets out, and then she threw these leaflets out over a balcony, and then a janitor who was sympathetic to the Nazis saw her do it. She stood trial, and then she died by guillotine.
That seems so barbaric. Was that like a normal? Wouldn't have been normal in the like 30s, right?
In the 40s.
It was 40s. Yeah.
This would be like, I mean, that was the primary tool in the French Revolution to get rid of people who thought politically different thoughts than you, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like it's very symbolic.
Huh.
It's like, yeah, we could shoot you or we could send you to a gas chamber, but we're going to guillotine you because you are an enemy of the state.
Wow.
And your
Yeah.
thoughts are poisonous thoughts, right?
So brutal.
But her quote that her cellmate Elsie Gable remembers was, "How can we expect righteousness to prevail when there's hardly anyone willing to give himself up individually to a righteous cause?" And I think the question was like, is this actually going to make a difference? If a bunch of little college students distribute leaflets,
Yeah.
and apparently the Allies got a hold of one of the leaflets, and they reprinted them and dropped them from airplanes,
Wow.
because they really thought the White Rose Resistance was doing something amazing.
Huh.
But anyway,
pretty cool.
it got me thinking about like, I live in a cultural moment right now. How can I have the clarity that Sophie Scholl had? And it's like, is it hard to see what is righteous in our day? Is it like, it's interesting because I know followers of Jesus who have reacted very strongly against Justin Trudeau. And it's like,
Yes.
what he is doing is not righteous, right? There's been others who are reacting very strongly against like a Donald Trump, right? And they're
Yeah.
going, what he is doing is not righteous. And I guess that's like a bit of a confusion for me. Like, maybe they're both half right. Is one of them fully right? It's like, I guess I'm trying to come a little bit humbly and go, it does feel like, depending on the issue, you can have a political leader that is really standing for what you feel like is right. And I guess I want to start by going, I feel like it's very hard to see things clearly.
Mm-hmm.
We always are like, in retrospect, of course Adolf Hitler was horrible. Because we now know of the Holocaust. And
Yeah, yeah.
But like, if you're a German at the time, how did she see so clearly? Because my understanding is that a lot of Germans weren't aware always what was going on in the East in concentration camps. I think a lot of Germans saw Hitler is like, make Germany great again.
Right.
Yeah,
That's right.
MGGA.
Yeah.
You know, but
yeah.
if he was wearing his make Germany great again,
Yeah.
like, people have crushed us economically, but Germany's coming back. Germany's like, we're gonna have jobs. We're gonna have a vision to actually be the powerhouse that we've always been before. And like, people are just like, thank you, finally,
Yeah,
someone is
right,
like
right.
standing up for our people. And like, do you know what I mean? So I just feel like it's interesting that Sophie and her friends could see the evil clearly and called it out.
Yeah.
Like,
totally.
I don't know. I'd imagine, sorry, last thing for me, I'd imagine I'd be like a German student and I'd be like, yeah, no, like, it seems hard. It's like, my family feels really grateful to Hitler because they like, now they're working jobs. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
And like, I'm not trying to get across any idea that Hitler was good.
No,
I'm just
totally,
trying
yeah.
to like be sympathetic to be like a German student and be like, man, this is like, and yet I'm hearing rumors of Jews being put on trains. Surely that's not true.
Yeah.
Is that
It's
like
got an
propaganda?
exaggeration.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
yet she saw it clearly. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I want her clarity. I don't know.
Totally. No, I know. It's
Yeah.
and missing the forest for the trees, right? Because you're like, but I totally get that. I feel the same way where I'm a processor as well. And so like, yeah, I'm the same where I'm like, well, I kind of, I see that side, I see this side, I can understand this, so I feel like I would make a horrible politician because I just feel like I could never actually land somewhere, like I'd be like, but then and I feel like it's got to be a wiring thing sometimes too with people that just have like an ability to cut through the garbage and just like be like, nope, this is like, it's very clear and it's just like really, really succinct. And I feel like there's some things maybe that I have for that, but often like, actually it's funny, I had a friend who just told me about this story. He was at Costco, I'll make this quick. He's an example that's not like me. He was at Costco, they were eating something, and then all of a sudden there was this commotion, and he saw this woman kind of like basically she kind of fell on her butt, kind of fell on the butt, and then he was like, and then these two guys went like ripping past him, and people were chasing them. And so this is all happening in real time, right? And so he gets up right away, and he's like, someone pushed down that woman, he's just like, and he like ran after them, and they caught these guys. He jumped on the pile, and they kind of held him until the cops came. And it turns out these guys, I guess, were trying to steal her purse or something, I think. So, but I was like, man, that is amazing. Like, I feel like in that situation, I'd be like, okay, so what has happened? Like, do we know did she do something to like that was really horrible, and somehow they were trying to get away from her? And then of course it's already over, and I'd still be processing like, wonder what just happened here, Meanwhile, he was like, he just knew, and he went for it. And anyways, that's
decisive.
But, people just have that kind of. But it is amazing. I totally agree with you. I'm like, there's lots of ways of, and you also have in our current day and age, I have really good people on either side, right? Especially when we're talking about Donald Trump, of course, is in particular. I mean, Trudeau as well, but Trump especially is like, he's very easy to talk about, right?
Yeah, totally.
I feel like I've got good people on either side of me that are making the argument that Donald Trump, like either it's like there are some good policies here, there's whatever, some good things that can, or it's like he's absolutely horrible. Like, how on earth could Christians be supporting this terrible person, And I'm like, I really do love both sides a lot, So anyways, all that to say is that I'm with you. It is sometimes very hard to be able to figure out what exactly is the right path here.
I also want to chat about the prepackaged political worldview section, where we have the right and the left. And I want to talk about how those ecosystems don't work for me. And so I use 3 examples in the sermon where, like, if I follow Jesus and feel like I'm following Jesus, there's certain things about the right that I like, certain things about the left. And so, like, one of the examples I used was the idea of, like, how do I care about climate change on the one hand and care about the baby in the mother's womb and the dangers of abortion? And maybe I just want to unpack that a little bit more. I think these are very complicated issues, right? And maybe we can get into it, but I totally get that there are a variety of views on how to care for the earth. I know people have those. And there are people who are saying, listen, like, there's not one way to just care for the earth. It's not like we all have to drive a Tesla or have like an electrical vehicle just to care for the earth. There's ways of caring for the earth. And then also, like with the pro-life thing, I think there are people who are pro-choice who are like, no, I believe that that's a baby. I believe it's a baby. I just ultimately can't envision a law helping us. Like, ultimately, I don't think laws help. So I get that. But what I'm saying is, it feels like the left has co-opted the climate change issue. The right has taken the abortion issue and said like, and it's almost like the person on the other side couldn't possibly be a believer or like, and I know some people are like, okay, these issues are different. Like, let's say the climate change issue, it feels like for many, it's not about life or death.
Right.
So some Christians go, wow, this is not, but some climate change people go, well, it is about life and death, because many of the poor in the world are going to be most affected by climate change, by all kinds of like different weather patterns and famines and low-lying sea areas where like it's the poor that will get affected by a lot of these things.
Yeah, LA fires, right? People like, you know, what you think
the fires, and then with the abortion side, like just, people feeling like, oh, it just feels like like the right doesn't own compassion for babies. Like, I still love babies. I just don't understand the hunt for a law. It still feels like these issues are in these ecosystems a little bit. And it's like I'm fighting for a nuance, but what I don't like is that like each side owns an issue. Anyway, any thoughts on that?
And the problem is, of course, and I think anyone would agree with this, there's just, like you said, there's so many layers to each of the topics. There's so many layers to climate change. There's so many layers to abortion, right? And pro-life or pro-choice, and it's just like, well, the abortion one is a good one, because you're thinking like a lot of let's say left-leaning or whatever, people that are pro-choice, like I don't think I know of a lot of, or any pro-choice people that would be like, no, we really like abortion, It's much more like, no, we actually really want to care for the mother, and we actually also believe, again, historically, that the data would say actually making abortion illegal won't solve the problem of abortion, right? So there's got to be a better way. And climate change is the same thing, right? I know you've talked before about like it affects people. These topics affect people in different ways depending on their circumstance and depending even on their livelihood, right? Like climate change, it's like fossil fuels. We've talked about oil. You've got a lot of people that are really, really dependent on the oil industry for their livelihood, for their families. They have been maybe it's been in the family for decades, right? And so
you're from Alberta.
I'm from Alberta. Well, I lived 5 years in Alberta, but those are very influential years, And actually, we lived in a. It's funny actually now because we live in a farming community that I love so much. Seriously, I romanticize Brownfield, Alberta, like more than anything else. You can ask my kids; they're always like, my dad romanticizes Brownfield because it was like from like age 7 to 11 or something, so kind of that prime year.
Oh yeah.
But even now, it's funny when I'll see like some of their Facebook posts or whatever, and they're all very, very right leaning.
Yes.
It's very funny. But I'm like. But somehow I kind of get it, it makes sense as far as their particular circumstance. But so totally, I know what you mean. I don't have a lot more to say about it, but I agree with you totally. It's so complex and it's so hard to be like sometimes I don't want to, sometimes you want to be like, I care about this, but not the way that politician cares about it. Like I do care about this, but I don't want to be associated with him,
Right.
And that's another layer to it all, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Another two examples I talked about was this idea of medical assistance of dying and the idea of compassion for the refugee. And I wonder if, again, we don't have to talk about all of these issues. I'll even bring up the others. The other was like God's blueprint for marriage, one man, one woman, and a culture that sees violence as the answer to violence, like a gun culture.
Right. Yeah.
Tanya, when I was coming up writing the sermon, she was like, okay, that one feels a little bit more south of the border. Although I've seen a gun culture influence north of the border.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
And,
I think so.
So I as we think about these issues, like I'm curious to hear your thoughts, but when I feel like, I feel like there's a way in which we can say there's so much nuance that all of these issues are very complicated. But I wonder if I could push us in this conversation to be like, but it does feel like at the end of the day, let me just use climate change for an example. Either the earth is warming due to our carbon footprint, or it's not.
Right.
Okay. Let's try abortion. Either God's desire is for us to see that baby. The baby either is a human being that is already like loved by God. You know, those words to Jeremiah, like that he knew Jeremiah, like John the Baptist leaps in his mother's womb.
Yeah, right.
You know, when coming near Jesus, a pregnant Mary, basically, is the child a person or not in the womb? Do you know what I mean? So it's like with climate change, it's like, is it actually affecting or not? Like with same-sex marriage, it's like, is God's heart for two men to marry, two women to marry, or is his blueprint for a man and a woman to be married? Like, unless we're saying God doesn't have an opinion, it's easy to say Scripture, for some, Scripture is not clear. For Matthew Price, Scripture's clear. But I get for some, they're like, no, there's complicated things. I guess what I'm trying to push us to, if I could, Jesus either does believe that you and I should protect ourselves with handguns.
Right, yeah.
Or not. Like, I think I struggle with, like, I do believe God has a moral will for us.
Right.
And that there is something called truth. So, like, I guess I do feel that certain parties are more willing to say, based on the issue, this is there is a bit of truth that they would land on that I would say, okay, I thank you for saying the truth here. I do agree with that. Does that make sense? Like,
it does, yeah.
Even though, what I'm trying to say is that even though the issues are all complicated and you can nuance them all and there's hard things, I think what I'm trying to say is that each of these issues, there is something about them that is either empirically true or not. Something that I wonder if God would say, oh yeah, no, I do have a moral opinion on that. And it seems like both right and left have those that honor God.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. But I think, like, I guess I don't feel as clear as you do. Like, I do believe that, absolutely, that there's, like, that there's a plumb line. There is truth, and there are things that are not true. Like, I totally believe that. I wonder though, like, I think of my lens with God so often is God as the great responder and the great redeemer. And I just think that so much is broken, and not to be fatalistic about it, but so much in our world is broken. Even I've used this example even in the church, the church at large. It's like, we all know there's so much that is broken in the church, and yet God still continues to use the church in the world, and God will continue to use the church in the world. So I do feel like I don't know if we'd agree on this. Like, I think there are things, let's say, take a really dumb, small issue that it's like, I don't know that God, jaywalking, I don't know that God has a huge, like a really clear line on that, depending on, now you might say, well, you could peel that back and say, well, how about the rule of law? Should we obey the rule of law if it's not, like whatever. But I do wonder if, like, there is that old saying, like, for one man, it may be a sin for him to walk into a bar. For another man in that same bar, it could be an act of worship for him to walk into that bar, right? To go and be like, this is my evangelism. I'm going to go in there. I know, I'm waiting for you to laugh. So I'm just trying to make sure. There, just like start
it's an act of worship.
Yeah. No, but really, okay. What I mean by that is like someone who's saying, okay, Matthew, you know what? I'm just gonna. So let's say Bob knows that his friend Chad is in the bar. Chad should not be in the bar. Bob's like, I'm going to go in there, and even though I don't want to because Chad's such a pain, but I'm going to go in there, I'm going to actually try to get him out. I'm going to save his family by getting in there. And I'm just saying, this is my point. Or there's someone who's like, this is my witness. That's maybe a dumb example. My point is, it's circumstantial.
It's their quiet time?
It's their quiet time. I just think, I guess I feel like context does really matter, and circumstances do really matter. And sometimes, I just wonder if God's like, well, here's the thing. I didn't want the machine in the first place, but you guys built the machine. because I'm not going to stand in your way. You built the machine. I will continue to work within the machine. But it's not as though this was ever part. It's like, I just wonder sometimes, it's like, it wasn't my, I know you don't like this, it wasn't my plan A, but none of this that you guys have done was really my plan A. You guys are broken human beings. So I'm going to work within the system that you guys have kind of built. I will move in, I will respond, I will redeem when you let me in. Like, I'm not going to kick your door down, but I will knock at the door, So anyways, I'm not even sure where I'm with that, but
right. I think I hear you say, if you're saying this, is like, life is really messy and things are very complicated at times to know exactly God's moral will for a particular situation.
Yeah.
So I think what I'm trying to say is, it feels like the right and left political parties are willing to land the plane and make a call and say, let's say a political party says, we don't believe that people should own guns that kill human beings.
Right.
We don't think that should be allowed in our, hunting rifles for hunting. Sure, you get a license, you whatever, but guns kill people.
Yeah.
And the NRA says no, people kill people.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And I'm saying, well, no, actually, like to firearms as a way of dealing with violence in your culture. Like, I appreciate that. That's moral clarity. That says, like, oh, I'd be willing to vote for someone who's willing to say, I don't believe people owning guns that are meant to kill people. I don't think that's the solution. And I think that resonates with a God who says to Peter, put away your sword.
Right.
And who one day we will beat our swords into plowshares, right? And spears into pruning hooks.
Are you showing your cards for the first time with that particular issue? I feel like you don't usually sort of say, this is what I do believe in this particular topic.
Yeah. Well, I guess what I'm saying now is I've probably kind of said it in the message, but I believe that a party that says, I believe that a baby in the womb is a human life that needs to be protected, I'd vote for that.
Yeah.
I would say I would vote for someone who says, I actually do believe fossil fuels are hurting the earth and making the global temperature rise. I think that's that's a very important thing.
Yeah.
So I like it that there are politicians who care about that.
Mm-hmm.
I obviously think they need to care for people in the oil and gas industry and find a way to wean us out. All of that. But I'm saying I also care about people who would say, I think we need to be a compassionate country when it comes to immigrants. And we can't demonize immigrants. And I also think that I think it is good when a society is based on the blueprint that God gave the world, which I think is the common good for marriage, which is one man, one woman, children growing up, understanding what a father and a mother looks like. And all the brokenness of that is hard, right? But like that we still pursue that blueprint. I like that group. I think the blueprint of one man, one woman in marriage is something that's good for Canada. I know I just think like I haven't found a party who believes in that blueprint, who cares about global temperatures rising, who wants to be open to the immigrant, who believes that the baby is a human life.
Yes.
Who,
you know
what I mean?
Totally.
And like it gets crazy where I'm like, anyway.
Yeah, no.
But I'm showing a lot of my cards here, but I'm.
That's great. I think it's great.
Okay.
A lot of people. The only reason I say this, I've had a handful of those conversations over the years. Like, so I want to know what Matthew actually thinks about this topic or that topic, because I think it's good that you're actually somewhat. You don't necessarily blurt it out, right? Because then that can be weird too, right? When pastors do that. But no, I totally hear. I completely hear what you're saying. I feel like It's funny. You ever heard of the Forward Party?
No.
No. Okay. Andrew Chang. Anyways, we don't need to get into. He's like Andrew Chang was like a Democrat. He was running for.
Oh yeah.
Anyways, he seems like a really good guy. But it's sort of like this idea of like sort of a centrist kind of party that they're trying to.
Oh yeah.
They've been trying to get going. I don't think, according. From what their Instagram likes count is not going that well.
It's
but,
not high.
Yeah. So, anyways, but no, it is interesting. I agree with you, and it can be very paralyzing, right? Because you're like, I don't, and then it's like I don't want to. Like I hate the rhetoric of the, like it's funny because sometimes people that I might think are correct are just total jerks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you're like, I'd rather be wrong with this person over here than right with that guy because he's such a jerk, you know? And I know it's politics, you got to take it more serious than that, but still, yeah, that's frustrating as well. Anyways, we should move on, yeah.
That's actually probably where we're different.
Yeah?
I think so.
Let's talk about that.
You said you'd rather be wrong. Sorry, you'd rather be with, say it again. You'd rather be...
There are certain things where I'd be like, I'd rather be wrong with this party than right with that party.
I don't know if I agree.
No, I'm sure you don't. Yeah, I would think so.
Like, to me, like the truth part...
Mm-hmm. What is truth?
So I ultimately believe that truth and love, so this is my thing that I feel like that truth and love are not, you can't separate them.
Right, yeah.
And
I just feel like that gets so abused, but I know what you're saying. I do agree with you.
I think you probably feel like it gets abused on one side, but don't you feel like it can be abused on the opposite side too?
Yeah, I do.
Or,
sorry, when I think about truth and love, I can think of particular instances where it has been abused, right? Which is like, no, I'm just trying to be honest with you. Like, you know,
right.
you know, and you're just like, oh, no, you're just being a jerk. No, I'm just being honest. You know, it's like,
yeah.
no, you're just being cruel, actually, you know?
Yeah.
That's what I mean. And whether it's, I'm not even talking political sides or whatever, but.
And I think the opposite of that, this is the first time I've ever said this out loud, so I don't know if this is true. It feels like the opposite of that is to say, like on the one hand, you've got someone that's saying, you know what, I love you, but here's the truth.
Yeah.
And it's coming across very unloving.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't the opposite of that be a scenario where it's like, I love you, and it's almost, there's not an inverse. It's like I'm not sharing the truth with you because of love. Right? Like
yeah.
Like I'm not going to tell you the truth because I love you.
Yes.
And then I'm like, oh, wait, like, wouldn't that? Oh,
no, I know what you mean. Okay. I want my oral surgeon tomorrow to be brutally honest with me, like brutally honest with me. I want a doctor, an oncologist to be brutally honest with me.
Yeah.
I don't want my counselor to be brutally honest with me. Actually, you know, like I would like my counselor to be honest, but it's like it's okay to take a few sessions to get there. You know what I mean? Like I'm like
I guess, but what if they were like, Cory, you genuinely are displaying some narcissistic tendencies, and I'm saying it very loving, and I just want to let you know. By the way, that's the opposite of Cory. But like, if a counselor said that to you, you'd be like, ouch, but like, thank you.
No. I think that needs relationship first. So I think that there are a few circumstances where that is possible. It depends on the topic, right? It's like if it's like, Cory, you are an abusive person. Yes, that's good. I would agree with you. But if it's like it seems to me, Cory, that there are some qualities that seem to be like, I don't know, narcissistic is such a buzzword, but like, you know, or let's find another topic. Like you've got a lot of these things are connected to your dad. Like you know, over the last few sessions we've talked about your house, you know, and like over time you come to the truth, but it only gets there because you've established a trust and a relationship. And anyways, I know we're getting into the weeds here, but so I feel like it's like I just don't want my counselor to be brutally honest. You know, I'd rather be like, no, let's work this out in a relational kind of way, and we kind of slowly get there. But of course I do believe in truth in love. Maybe the in love is very, very important, and truth is very important too. It's just sometimes it's my truth in love. You know, it's like this is how I feel, and so I'm just telling you in love. Yeah. This is how I see it. You know, and it's like, okay, well, it's just who's got the plumb line, right? That's the problem.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I think what I felt is that sometimes it feels awkward to, like, there are things about, like, to use this phrase, which I know is often overused, but like woke leftist things, where I'm like, oh, well, that group believes that climate change is real and cares a lot about it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But let's say there was an opportunity to be like, someone goes like, are you standing with the woke people when it comes to climate change? And I'd be like, I guess I am.
Right. Yeah. If you put it that way, then yeah.
And someone goes, are you standing with, you know, the right-leaning MAGA folk when they believe in the blueprint of marriage? And I'm like, I don't know. I guess I am. I guess I believe in one man. or you're standing with a bunch of those right-leaning people who believe in pro-life causes, and I'm like, I guess I am. Like, I'm not standing with anyone. And this is, anyway, this gets to like that idea of that, we don't have time for it, but like that idea of that commander of the Lord's army in the book of Joshua, where Joshua asks him, are you for us or for them? Which is like the Canaanites or for Israel? And he goes, neither.
Yeah, that's great.
So I guess what I'm trying, maybe what I'm trying to say is like, I guess I'm not with any of those camps, but there are times where I'm like, I look around and I'm like, I don't know if these are all my people, but like, I definitely appreciate this point that they have.
Yeah.
Like I can agree with this point.
Yeah.
I don't know if these are my folk.
Yes. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I don't know.
I do agree. No, I think I do feel like I really admire people. It was funny that are honest. Of course they do. But like when they're saying like, well, I don't actually like, I wouldn't vote in this direction because of this and this and this, but I have to say that I really do admire this and this and that. Cause that actually has made it really difficult for me to
Yeah.
But like I like that kind of nuance. It just feels human, as opposed to like this sort of the far. It's like, oh my word, like this is amazing. Everything about it is or like, oh my word, it's like everything is like horrible and like it's like and you're like, oh, there's got to be an in between here. There's got to be a way to still be thoughtful and still make firm decisions, but without demonizing, as we've been talking about this whole series. And
Yes. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I think we're running out of some time here, and I just love Tim Keller's point. He makes these 5 points where the early Christian church, for 300 years lived a faithfulness in how it lived out 5 things.
Yes, yeah.
And it eventually overturned the Roman Empire, right? Like the values of the empire were changed.
Yes, yeah.
I think up to a third of the Roman Empire became Christians, and after 300 years. And they were multiracial, multi-ethnic. They cared for the poor. They practiced forgiveness and nonviolence. They cared for the unborn and stood against abortion and infanticide. And they believed in one man, one woman for life, for marriage. And they just did that for 300 years. And maybe the final thing I want to end on is like, that to me has been very inspiring to think like how many generations of Christians died without seeing the Roman Empire changed or transformed, right?
Yeah.
Or like, they would have never thought that Christianity would one day become the faith of the empire.
Totally.
But they just faithfully followed Jesus. And I think historically the early church is such a, like they're my heroes. Like I feel like I look up to them, and I've been trying in the last few years to learn more about the early church. But they're just such a great model for being like they're just going to hold the line, and this may not fit a political package, but they're just being faithful to Jesus. So yeah, I'll end with that myself. I don't know if you have any.
I just was
thoughts.
curious. In the sermon, I thought this too. Like number 4, I was curious. Like infanticide, I understand. Was abortion really a thing in that time? Like, and
yes,
it makes me. It feels awful to imagine.
It's awful. Oftentimes the woman would die.
Yeah.
Like
and what was usually the reasoning behind? Was it just because they just didn't want a baby? Was that actually like was that usually the reasoning behind it? Was there?
Well, I think some of this is like even in the birthing process.
Oh.
Like if it's a girl.
Right. Oh,
kind of
terrible.
a thing.
Yeah.
We have a early church letter of like a soldier who's like in his post, but he writes to his wife. I can't remember the name. You can actually Google this and find this letter. But and he says, it's kind of like talking about normal life, and then he goes, oh, and by the way, when you have your baby, if it's a boy, keep it. If it's a girl, kill it. Or whatever. You know what I mean? So I don't even know if it's like early, first, second trimester type of abortions, or if there are ways to do. I don't know much about the topic, but I did read that letter, and it does seem like the early church was just very against it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's really wild. Yeah. No, that was powerful, and it's interesting how Keller talks about how the first 2, multiracial, multi-ethnic, and then highly committed to caring for the poor. That sounds liberal, and then the last 2, against abortion and infanticide, and then of course revolution, the sex ethic, sound conservative.
Yeah.
And then what was number 3? You said like non-retaliatory.
It's the one nobody wants to do.
Yeah, no one wants to do the forgiveness part. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Totally. So true. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really interesting. I sometimes wonder if we, and I know we, Darcy, who usually does our filming, had to step out. So we're like, I think we've got 5 minutes before we run out of tape. Do you think that we ever over romanticize the early church?
Oh, we probably do.
Yeah, probably do, right? I
probably
imagine.
do.
Like, I'm sure they're, because I just feel like you wonder if there's just like normal humans that are like, screwed
yeah.
up again, whatever kind of thing. And
Yeah.
I think it's easy to be like, they were like, but yeah, no, it's curious. I was wondering about that. Ruby's doing a lot of studying on the early church as well. She's been really enjoying that. Yeah,
Cool.
It's been cool.
That's great. It's startling how many of them are like pacifists.
Yeah,
Like
right.
when you read it, and that like very few Christians today, I think, are really grappling with that. Like you read and they will not take the sword. And it's just like, whoa, and they practice forgiveness. And it just seemed like it was a much more robust part of their, and I'm thinking like, how cool if the church, okay, this is my final thought for today.
Yeah.
How cool if the church really took that seriously, if I took that seriously, truly loving my political enemies, truly loving people who are different than me, truly forgiving, practicing nonviolence. Like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Like what a difference that would be.
Yeah, totally. No, it's a beautiful vision for sure. It'd be nice to, because it does, unfortunately, again, in the world we live in, you see all the big the clickbait things of pastors, like, just like promoting, this party or that party, and like just being so the opposite of forgiving our enemies or loving our enemies, right? And it would be a very refreshing way forward for us. Yeah, I love
That's
it.
right.
Cool.
Shake and bake.
Shake and bake. Okay, good. Is that it? Are we done?
We're good. We're done.
Okay, good. Well, hey, thanks, North Langley. We will see you on Sunday. If you see me, I might have massive cheeks. Maybe not. We'll see if who knows how it all goes. But yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you. Goodbye. Let's just take the last part. Darcy, should we change the last part? Okay. All right, good. If I can't talk, I'm like, all right, go on.
You're giving me wind and
Yeah.
rain. You're some kind of bird.